From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good Sunday morning. Across the state of Texas, people are trying to recover from the winter storm that left millions without electricity and water for days. Let's get to the three things you need to know in Texas politics. President Joe Biden traveled to Texas Friday to tour parts of Houston hit hard by the storm. He and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden met with volunteers at a food bank, and the president spoke at NRG Stadium, which is now a mass COVID vaccination site. Governor Gov Abbott is looking at when Texas can roll back COVID regulations, including mask wearing. The governor was asked when the statewide mask mandate would end during a news conference in Corpus Christi Thursday. Abbott said that was a great question, adding his team is evaluating when the COVID mandates can end, and he says an announcement will be made, quote, pretty soon. In a statewide address, Governor Abbott promised to find answers to what caused last week's power crisis. He candidly admitted that he, too, was angry and vowed the Texas legislative session will not end until the problems that caused days-long outages are fixed. This week, Texas lawmakers started their work on preventing another power crisis. House and Senate committees held marathon hearings on Thursday and Friday, grilling power generators, ERCOT's president and CEO, the chair of the Public Utility Commission, who oversees ERCOT and is appointed by the governor, and more. This morning, we want to bring you some of the testimony from those hearings, starting with the House of Representatives and a heated moment during the questioning of the CEOs of power generator companies Vistra Corp and NRG.
Gentlemen, we got a lot of people watching this. And I hope you haven't been lawyerized rather than weatherized. But I haven't heard much. So here's the question I think most people are wanting to ask you. Who's at fault? I don't want to hear about systems. I want to hear who's at fault. So let's start. And I'm going to ask every panel member. I want the public to know who screwed up. I think that's what people want to know. So number one, Mr. Gutierrez, who's at fault? Not systems. I want names and details.
I don't think you can put specifically one thing that was at fault. I think the entire system.
I want details. We'll cut through these questions. Don't need a general lawyer analysis. I want details. You have to believe a man in your position that you know who is probably responsible. So tell me some specific groups.
We had issues on the fuel supply.
And who is that?
I don't know.
Which panel is that?
I'm assuming it's the fuel supply, the gas supply, the gas producer.
Gas supplier.
So you had gas suppliers. Okay.
Who's number two?
Power generators, and we're here.
Okay, number two.
We've talked about the winterization protocols that we had. I talked about specifically some of the issues that I had on our power plants, and the reasons why we had them. I think there is a conversation about what is the excess capacity that we want to have in case something like this happens.
Not to interrupt, I want groups. I don't need to hear about winterization. Or the people want to know who to look to. So you told me systems.
Power generators, right. ERCOT, PUCT, fuel supply, and transmission and distribution owners. And right. I believe all of them are going to be having a conversation with you today.
Now, sir, tell me from Irving, Texas, who you think's at fault.
I think I've been saying it. I don't know. But I definitely think we have a part of that as power generators. I don't think that anybody can say we perform perfectly. I think gas producers, look, I know everybody wants to play, who's at blame. I look at this as who can improve. Nobody's perfect, and I know we live in a society now that wants to blame people all the time. That's not my game. What I'm trying to point out to you is where the areas of weakness are in the overall system. And I know you don't like systems, but that's too bad. That's what it is.
Let me interrupt you, sir.
So I said producers.
That sounds like a lawyer talk.
I'm no lawyer, and I didn't even talk to a lawyer. I didn't even talk to a lawyer.
Specifically who's responsible.
I didn't even talk to a lawyer before I came here. I came here at my own free will to tell you guys what I see. I've already said this. Producers, I think the gas processing plants could have been winterized. I think the gas companies basically increased prices arbitrarily and took a bunch of money out of the system. You want to know who the people are? I said ERCOT. I've already said this before. You cannot say ERCOT without saying the PUC because the PUC has oversight. There's plenty of blame to go around. It doesn't do anything to solve anything, but I've already said this. I think the thing was a colossal failure. It's the only way you get to where we got. This many people out for that many days doesn't happen with one person at fault.
The Texas Senate spent hours Thursday questioning Deanne Walker, the chair of the body that oversees ERCOT, the Public Utility Commission. The chair is appointed by the governor. It was clear lawmakers were unsatisfied with her answers.
Chairman Walker, you mentioned several times to the committee that you doubt the authority that you hold. And I just wondered, have you asked the legislature in all of the meetings that you've had with myself and the rest of the Senate over the past few weeks, have you asked the legislature for the authority that you need to carry out your obligations? Or do you feel that you have enough authority?
I think currently? It depends on what obligation you're referring to. If you're referring to weatherization, I think I need more.
Well, so that's a great example. Under the Public Utility Regulatory Act, that act gives the commission complete authority over ERCOT. So you understand that, correct? You have complete authority over ERCOT. So I'm having trouble with you mentioning several different times that you lack the authority or that this or that has been delegated to ERCOT. Do you feel when you delegate a certain issue or a certain responsibility to ERCOT, do you feel at that point that you're absolved from the responsibility of that oversight?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That's your answer. So you feel like even if you delegate to ERCOT, you still hold the authority and the responsibility to the public, to the state of Texas, to carry out your duties?
Yes, sir.
And have you asked the legislature leading up to this session, anyone in the legislature, the Senate or the House, in all the meetings that you've had, have you asked for anything different?
No, sir.
Why is that?
Sir, I don't think that anyone at the commission understood, or I should speak on my behalf. I don't think that I understood the situation and the underlying issues until we have lived through this.
And my concern also, when I hear the answers that you've given us, we heard from ERCOT, it's PUC, heard from you, ERCOT, I don't know, I don't have an understanding of that. You are in responsibility, so I'm really appreciating the knowledge it takes to be in your position. Because as commissioner, well, the PUC, you've got oversight, responsibility for the competitive markets. You oversee the competitive electric markets. You oversee ERCOT's budget and operations. You enforce statutes and rules for the electric industry. But yet you don't seem to demonstrate the knowledge that it takes to do that, and that's concerning. I recognize coming before a group, it can be intimidating and scary, and I believe you want to try to answer the questions to your fullest ability, but I'm not sure that you're doing that. And I don't know how much, I can take anymore.
On February 15th, Texans experienced something few of us have seen in our lifetimes. The Lone Star State covered in inches of snow, and children across Texas were overjoyed at the sight of white, fluffy flakes falling from the sky, especially 11-year-old Christian Pineda. That Monday, he went outside and joyfully played in the snow, sliding back and forth. It was the first time in his young life that he'd been able to play in snow. And it was his last. After an exciting day, Christian went inside his family's mobile home, but as was the case for millions of us, there was no power. He went to bed that night dressed in 2 layers of clothes under a pile of blankets. His stepfather even checked on him at 2 o'clock in the morning and added another blanket for good measure. But later that day, when it was time for Christian to wake up, his body was lifeless. This perfectly healthy child, whose parents say had no medical conditions, died inside a cold home. Imagine for a moment his last moments on earth. His story is one of dozens. We still don't know how many people across this state died because of failed leadership, but we do know for certain this didn't have to happen that way it did. And to top it off, while people were clinging to life, the folks in charge were pointing fingers, blaming wind turbines, flying to Mexico, not taking responsibility. Instead, we get this person blaming that person who blames this person, and we're all left wondering who the hell is in charge. I report on politics. I know what is written and said and who is supposed to be in charge. But as I sat, just like you, in the cold, trying to keep my infant warm in a house with no power and no water, debating if my family should brave the ice-covered roads to try and get to safety or believe the public officials and electric companies who told us this was temporary and my power would be back soon, it became painstakingly clear that there is a lack of leadership on so many levels. I will tell you what I do know. You and I can fix this. No, not in the short term, but soon. You and I can watch the people we elected. We can see how they vote on legislation to fix this, look into who's lining their pockets, and if we do not like what we find, we can vote them out. At the end of the day, we live in a democracy, so it is up to us to hold the powerful accountable. Yes, it will take time out of your day to stay informed, but I think we owe that much to Christian and the dozens of others whose leaders failed them. That's the last word, and this has been Texas This Week.